The salty Florida air of 1996 carried laughter, then a chilling silence. A young couple on a sun-drenched beach vacation vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a heartbroken community. Fast forward 28 years, and the tide, a silent witness, has finally begun to reveal its secrets. Imagine the shock, the chilling dread, as weathered fabric, once vibrant, surfaces from the very sand where their dreams were made. This is not just a cold case. It's a decades-long mystery unearthed by time and the relentless ocean. We'll delve into the initial joy of their trip, the heart-wrenching disappearance, and the profound impact of this 28-year-later discovery, piecing together fragments of a life lost and the lingering hope for closure. This narrative plunges into the heart of a mystery that has haunted a quiet coastal town for nearly 3 decades. It's a story that begins with the carefree joy of young love, a stolen moment of paradise on the shores of Florida, and ends with a void, a gaping hole where 2 vibrant lives once existed. The year 1996, for many, evokes memories of a specific cultural landscape, a particular blend of optimism and emerging anxieties. For Sarah and Mark, it was meant to be a chapter of pure bliss, a celebration of their burgeoning future. Their decision to escape to the sun-drenched beaches of the Gulf Coast was a quintessential choice for young Americans seeking adventure and romance. They envisioned days filled with the warmth of the sun, the gentle rhythm of the waves, and the promise of a lifetime together. This idyllic setting, however, would soon become the backdrop for an unimaginable tragedy, a stark contrast between the beauty of nature and the darkness of human experience. The initial disappearance was met with disbelief, then a growing sense of panic. How could 2 people, seemingly in the prime of their lives, simply evaporate from a public beach? The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of frantic searches, tearful interviews, and the agonizing wait for any sign, any clue that might shed light on their fate. Law enforcement agencies, local volunteers, and the couple's devastated families scoured the coastline, their efforts amplified by the media's intense spotlight. Yet, the ocean, vast and enigmatic, offered no answers, swallowing their hopes along with any potential evidence. The case quickly became a chilling reminder of the vulnerability that can exist even in the most seemingly secure environments, a stark illustration of how quickly life can change, how swiftly joy can be replaced by despair. The unanswered questions became a heavy burden, a constant ache for those left behind, a testament to the enduring power of love and the profound pain of unresolved loss. The passage of 28 years is a significant span of time, a period during which memories can fade, hope can dwindle, and the sharp edges of grief can sometimes soften into a dull, persistent ache. For the families of Sarah and Mark, this period was a relentless cycle of anniversaries, of birthdays missed, of holidays spent in quiet remembrance. The hope for answers, though perhaps buried deep, never truly died. It persisted, a flickering flame in the darkness, fueled by the enduring love for their lost ones and the injustice of their unknown fate. This enduring mystery became woven into the fabric of the community, a somber legend whispered with a mixture of sadness and fascination. It served as a constant, unspoken reminder of the fragility of life and the profound impact that even one unsolved disappearance can have on an entire town. The world moved on, technology advanced, and new generations were born. Yet the story of Sarah and Mark remained a poignant, unresolved chapter. The recent discovery, however, has dramatically shifted the narrative, injecting a potent, albeit complex, element of renewed hope and profound shock. The surfacing of weathered fabric, remnants of a life that seemingly vanished into the ether, is more than just a physical find. It's a tangible connection to the past, a potential key to unlocking the secrets that the ocean has held captive for so long. This discovery doesn't just represent a breakthrough in a cold case, it signifies a profound moment of reckoning with time itself. It's a testament to the ocean's dual nature, both a force of immense beauty and a silent keeper of secrets, capable of both preserving and obscuring the truth. The implications of this find are immense, promising to reignite the investigation, to potentially offer closure to grieving families, and to finally bring an end to the decades of agonizing uncertainty that have shrouded this story. This script aims to explore this extraordinary turn of events, not just as a crime story, but as a human drama. We will examine the initial joy and innocence of Sarah and Mark's vacation, contrasting it with the chilling reality of their disappearance. We will delve into the investigative efforts, the dead ends, and the growing despair that characterized the initial years. Crucially, we will focus on the impact of this 28-year-later discovery, exploring the emotional resonance of finding fragments of a lost life and the renewed quest for truth. This is a journey into the depths of human loss, the resilience of hope, and the enduring power of mysteries that, even after decades, can still surface from the sands of time, demanding to be heard. The story of Sarah and Mark, once lost to the waves, is now rising to the surface, ready to be understood. The initial wave of investigation following Sarah and Mark's disappearance in 1996 was characterized by a relentless, ground-level pursuit. Detectives meticulously combed through every inch of the beach, interviewed every tourist and local who might have been present, and established a timeline of their last known movements. This involved painstakingly reconstructing their vacation itinerary, from checking into their modest hotel room to their final moments on the public access beach. Every discarded cigarette butt, every misplaced beach towel, every unusual interaction was scrutinized. The sheer volume of data collected, much of it ultimately proving to be circumstantial or irrelevant, underscored the immense difficulty of finding two individuals who had seemingly dissolved into the vastness of the Florida coastline. The frustration mounted with each passing day, as the initial flurry of tips and sightings dwindled, leaving behind only a chilling silence and a deepening sense of dread. This phase of the investigation was a stark illustration of the limitations of traditional police work when confronted with a vanishing act that defied logical explanation. The focus was intensely on the how and the where, with little immediate traction on the who or the why. The community, united in its shock, offered unwavering support, but the sheer scale of the search area, coupled with the unpredictable nature of the ocean currents, presented an almost insurmountable challenge. It was a race against time, a desperate effort to find any trace before the elements and the passage of days rendered the search futile. The psychological toll on the families enduring this prolonged period of agonizing uncertainty was immense, a testament to the enduring agony of not knowing. Building on the immediate investigative efforts, a critical layer of inquiry emerged, the exploration of the couple's personal lives and relationships. Detectives delved into their backgrounds, seeking any potential stresses, conflicts, or hidden secrets that might provide a motive for either voluntary disappearance or foul play. This involved extensive interviews with their families, friends, colleagues, and even casual acquaintances. They sought to understand Sarah and Mark as individuals, to identify any personality traits, recent behavioral changes, or undisclosed anxieties that might offer a clue. Were they experiencing financial difficulties? Were there any romantic entanglements outside their relationship? Had they expressed any desire to escape their current lives? This investigative avenue, while crucial, often proved to be a delicate balancing act. Investigators had to navigate the sensitive territory of personal privacy while simultaneously searching for the key that might unlock the mystery. The goal was to discern whether their disappearance was a tragic accident, a planned departure, or the result of an external force. Consequently, the focus shifted from the immediate physical search to a more psychological and relational dissection, attempting to understand the internal landscape of the vanished couple, hoping to find a narrative thread that would lead them to the truth. Furthermore, the scientific and forensic approaches employed in the initial stages, though yielding little at the time, laid the groundwork for future analysis. While no immediate physical evidence of a crime was discovered on the beach or in their belongings, meticulous documentation of the scene and any recovered items was undertaken. This included detailed notes on the condition of their abandoned car, the contents of their hotel room, and any personal effects found scattered near their last known location. Even seemingly insignificant items were bagged, tagged, and preserved, a testament to the principle that in cold cases, what appears trivial today might become crucial tomorrow. The prevailing environmental conditions, the tides, the weather patterns, the specific geography of the coastline, were also carefully recorded. This data, though perhaps deemed insufficient for immediate breakthroughs, represented a foundational data set that could be revisited with advancements in forensic technology or with the emergence of new information. The initial lack of compelling forensic evidence, while disheartening, highlighted the challenge of proving a specific scenario when the primary evidence pool was so fluid and susceptible to natural forces. Another crucial layer of examination involved the broader sociological and psychological context of disappearances in tourist destinations. The year 1996 represented a different era in terms of communication and surveillance. Social media was non-existent, and the ubiquity of cell phones was still years away. This meant that any voluntary departure would have been significantly harder to track, and any potential abduction would have occurred with a lower probability of immediate witnesses or digital footprints. Investigators had to consider the possibility of transient criminals who preyed on unsuspecting tourists, a grim reality that often surfaces in such cases. The psychological profile of potential perpetrators, the typical modus operandi of those who might target individuals in isolated or semi-isolated beach settings, became part of the investigative consideration. This perspective broadened the scope beyond just Sarah and Mark's immediate circumstances, placing their vanishing act within a wider pattern of human behavior and vulnerability, acknowledging that their story, however unique, might share common threads with other unsolved mysteries. The investigation into Sarah and Mark's disappearance also necessitated a deep dive into the geological and oceanic characteristics of the Gulf Coast region where they vanished. Understanding the precise nature of the tides, the prevailing currents, and the typical erosion patterns of that specific stretch of coastline was paramount. Experts were consulted to model how debris or even human remains might be dispersed by the powerful forces of the sea over extended periods. This involved analyzing bathymetric charts, studying historical weather data, and understanding the long-term sediment transport dynamics of the area. The goal was to determine if the ocean could have realistically carried away all traces of the couple, or if certain areas might have acted as natural repositories for evidence. Now consider how this applies when you face a scenario where the environment itself becomes a primary factor in obscuring the truth. The very waves that offered them a picturesque backdrop could have simultaneously become the agents of their disappearance, erasing any physical testament to their fate. This scientific perspective offered a grim yet vital counterpoint to purely human-centric investigative theories. Furthermore, the psychological impact of prolonged uncertainty on the investigating agencies and the community itself became a significant, albeit often unacknowledged, factor. The sheer duration of the case, stretching from years into decades, presented unique challenges. Evidence could degrade, witnesses could relocate or pass away, and the initial investigative momentum could wane, replaced by a sense of weary resignation. Maintaining focus and morale within law enforcement, especially when faced with a seemingly unsolvable mystery, required a particular brand of dedication. For the community, the unresolved disappearance became a persistent shadow, a somber reminder of a tragic event that never truly concluded. This prolonged state of limbo fostered a unique collective trauma, where the absence of closure perpetuated the pain and prevented a full transition into mourning. Think about how communities often grapple with collective memory and the lingering effects of unsolved tragedies. It's akin to a wound that, without proper healing, continues to ache, influencing the emotional landscape of the area for generations. Another crucial layer involved exploring the possibility of a staged disappearance, a scenario where Sarah and Mark might have intentionally orchestrated their own vanishing. Investigators considered whether they had reasons to escape their lives, perhaps due to debt, personal entanglements, or a desire for a completely new identity. This line of inquiry involved scrutinizing their financial records for unusual transactions, looking for any evidence of pre-planning, such as the purchase of untraceable assets or the liquidation of property. It also meant analyzing their communication patterns for any coded messages or hints of dissatisfaction. This perspective, while less common than foul play or accidental death, is a necessary consideration in any missing persons case, especially when the initial evidence is scarce. It requires a shift in focus from external threats to internal motivations, exploring the complex motivations that might drive individuals to seek such a radical departure from their established lives. Finally, the broader cultural context of the mid-1990s played a subtle but significant role in the initial investigation and its subsequent evolution. The relative lack of advanced digital forensics, the nascent stages of widespread internet use, and the different societal attitudes towards personal privacy all shaped how the case was approached and how information was disseminated. Unlike today, where digital footprints are almost unavoidable, individuals in 1996 possessed a greater degree of anonymity. This technological landscape meant that a deliberate disappearance or even an abduction could be executed with a higher degree of success in evading immediate detection. Consequently, the investigative tools and methodologies available at the time, while robust for their era, were inherently limited in their ability to track individuals who were determined to remain hidden. This historical context is vital for understanding why the case remained unsolved for so long, highlighting how technological advancements have fundamentally altered the nature of investigations into missing persons and criminal activities. The profound psychological impact of prolonged uncertainty on the investigating agencies and the community itself became a significant, albeit often unacknowledged, factor in the enduring mystery. The sheer duration of the case, stretching from years into decades, presented unique challenges. Evidence could degrade, witnesses could relocate or pass away, and the initial investigative momentum could wane, replaced by a sense of weary resignation. Maintaining focus and morale within law enforcement, especially when faced with a seemingly unsolvable puzzle, required a particular brand of dedication. For the community, the unresolved disappearance became a persistent shadow, a somber reminder of a tragic event that never truly concluded. This prolonged state of limbo fostered a unique collective trauma where the absence of closure perpetuated the pain and prevented a full transition into mourning. Now consider how communities often grapple with collective memory and the lingering effects of unsolved tragedies. It's akin to a wound that without proper healing continues to ache, influencing the emotional landscape of the area for generations. This persistent emotional undercurrent undoubtedly affected the initial investigative climate, potentially leading to burnout or a subtle shift in priorities as newer, more immediate cases demanded attention. Moreover, the evolving landscape of media coverage and public perception over 28 years offers another critical lens through which to view this case. In 1996, local news channels and newspapers were the primary conduits of information. The narrative was largely controlled by official statements and limited public access to details. Fast forward to the digital age, and the dissemination of information, speculation, and even misinformation can occur at an unprecedented speed and scale. Online forums, social media groups, and true crime podcasts have created a global audience for cold cases, breathing new life into old mysteries. However, this also introduces challenges: the potential for sensationalism, the blurring of fact and fiction, and the ethical considerations of revisiting such sensitive events. The families of Sarah and Mark would have navigated vastly different media environments across these decades, each phase presenting its own set of pressures and expectations regarding the pursuit of truth and the public's fascination with their tragedy. The way their story was perceived and discussed by the public undoubtedly shifted, influenced by societal trends and technological advancements in communication. The scientific and technological advancements that have occurred since 1996, particularly in fields like DNA analysis and digital forensics, represent a game-changer for cold cases. What might have been an insurmountable investigative hurdle 2 decades ago could now be readily solvable. For instance, the ability to extract viable DNA from minute samples or to trace digital breadcrumbs that were invisible in the mid-90s offers a renewed opportunity to analyze any evidence that may have been previously overlooked or deemed inconclusive. Think about the subtle differences in how forensic science operates today compared to a quarter-century ago. It's like comparing a hand-drawn map to a sophisticated GPS system. This technological revolution means that old evidence, meticulously preserved, can be re-examined with entirely new capabilities, potentially uncovering crucial links or identifying previously unknown individuals. The very nature of evidence collection and analysis has been revolutionized, offering a glimmer of hope that previously impenetrable barriers might now be overcome. Another crucial layer involves the psychological profiles of individuals who might be involved in such disappearances, whether as perpetrators or as individuals seeking to vanish. The understanding of criminal psychology and the motivations behind voluntary disappearances has deepened considerably over the past 28 years. Researchers and law enforcement agencies have developed more sophisticated models for assessing risk factors, identifying behavioral patterns, and understanding the complex interplay of personal circumstances that might lead to such extreme outcomes. This deeper insight into human behavior, informed by decades of research and countless case studies, provides a richer framework for re-evaluating the Sarah and Mark mystery. It allows investigators to consider possibilities that might have been less apparent or understood in 1996, offering new avenues for profiling and for identifying potential leads that were previously invisible. The scientific study of human motivation and deviance has advanced significantly, providing a more nuanced understanding of the darkest corners of human experience. Finally, the concept of closure itself is a complex and often elusive notion in cases of prolonged mystery. For the families of Sarah and Mark, closure isn't simply about finding out what happened. It's about understanding the narrative, reconciling the loss, and finding a way to move forward. This can be an incredibly intricate emotional journey, especially when the nature of the disappearance remains unclear. The recent discovery, while potentially offering answers, also reopens old wounds and forces a confrontation with the past. Consider the delicate process of healing after a profound loss. It's not a linear path, and new information, even if it brings clarity, can also bring a fresh wave of grief. The quest for closure is not merely an investigative objective, but a deeply personal and emotional undertaking for those directly affected, and the path towards it is rarely straightforward, often involving a complex interplay of grief, acceptance, and the ongoing search for meaning. The initial investigation into Sarah and Mark's vanishing act was significantly hampered by the prevalent communication limitations of the mid-1990s. Unlike today's hyper-connected world, where cell phone towers, GPS tracking, and ubiquitous digital footprints make near-instantaneous location and communication possible, the early investigation operated in a technological void. The absence of widespread mobile phone usage meant that tracing their movements through call logs or location data was impossible. Likewise, the nascent stage of the internet meant that any online activity would have been minimal and harder to monitor. Consider how this stark difference impacts the very foundation of a modern missing person investigation. Without the digital breadcrumbs we now take for granted, law enforcement was forced to rely almost exclusively on traditional, on-the-ground methods, which proved woefully inadequate against a determined disappearance or a well-executed abduction. This technological disparity meant that any attempt to voluntarily vanish was significantly less risky, and any criminal seeking to abduct individuals had a far greater chance of succeeding without leaving a traceable record. Furthermore, the legal and procedural framework surrounding missing persons cases in 1996, while functional, lacked the sophisticated inter-agency cooperation and data-sharing protocols that have evolved since. The concept of a digital cold case unit was largely non-existent, and the integration of disparate datasets, from financial records to early forms of digital communication, was a far more cumbersome and fragmented process. Now, imagine the challenge of piecing together a puzzle when the individual pieces are scattered across various institutions, each with its own protocols and access limitations, and without the digital glue to bind them efficiently. This meant that leads that might have been connected through sophisticated algorithms or cross-reference databases today would have required manual, painstaking effort, often resulting in missed connections or delayed insights. The very architecture of investigative data management was less conducive to solving complex, long-term mysteries, making the task of finding Sarah and Mark an uphill battle from the outset. The societal perception of privacy in the mid-1990s also played a role, albeit indirectly. While privacy was certainly valued, the explosion of digital surveillance and data collection that has occurred since then was largely unimaginable. This meant that individuals had a greater expectation of anonymity in their daily lives, which, while a fundamental aspect of personal freedom, also presented a challenge for investigators seeking to establish a comprehensive picture of a person's activities leading up to a disappearance. Think about how our understanding of personal boundaries has shifted. In 1996, the idea of law enforcement having access to virtually every aspect of an individual's digital and financial life would have seemed intrusive. Yet today, it is often seen as a necessary tool for solving crimes. This evolving societal attitude towards privacy has fundamentally altered the investigative landscape, providing law enforcement with a broader, albeit more ethically complex, toolkit for tracking individuals and uncovering potential leads. Another crucial layer to consider is the initial limited understanding of the psychological profiles of individuals who might orchestrate their own disappearances. While theories existed, the comprehensive study and categorization of voluntary missing persons as a distinct phenomenon with specific motivational drivers and behavioral markers was less developed. Consequently, investigators might have been more inclined to focus solely on the possibility of foul play, potentially overlooking subtle clues that pointed towards a deliberate, self-initiated vanishing. It's akin to a doctor diagnosing a patient based on a limited range of known ailments, potentially missing a rarer, more complex condition. This less nuanced understanding of human motivation meant that certain avenues of inquiry, particularly those exploring the internal lives and desires of Sarah and Mark, might not have received the full investigative weight they warranted, leaving potential explanations undiscovered for years. The ethical considerations surrounding the media's portrayal of missing persons cases, especially those involving young couples and prolonged investigations, represent a distinct and crucial area of examination. In 1996, the media's role was primarily to report facts and foster community engagement in searches. However, the advent of the 24-hour news cycle and the subsequent rise of social media have amplified both the potential benefits and significant drawbacks of public attention. Now picture the delicate tightrope walk journalists must perform, balancing the public's right to know and the need for information with the profound privacy rights and emotional well-being of the victims' families. Sensationalism, the creation of unfounded theories, and the relentless pursuit of speculative details can not only cause immense distress, but also potentially contaminate the investigative process by introducing biases or misleading information. Conversely, responsible reporting can galvanize public support, encourage new witnesses to come forward, and maintain pressure on authorities to continue seeking answers. The ethical tightrope involves presenting facts accurately, respecting the dignity of those involved, and avoiding the exploitation of tragedy for ratings or clicks. Furthermore, the psychological impact on the families of victims, particularly those experiencing prolonged uncertainty, warrants a deeper dive. Beyond the initial shock and grief, there exists a unique form of sustained trauma associated with unsolved disappearances. This trauma can manifest as a constant state of hypervigilance, difficulty in processing grief, and a persistent sense of injustice. Think about the unique burden of living with an open wound, a question mark that overshadows every aspect of life. The families are not just mourning a loss, they are engaged in an ongoing, involuntary battle for answers, a struggle that can consume their lives for decades. This persistent emotional toll can affect their relationships, their careers, and their overall mental health, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate family unit, touching friends and the wider community who empathize with their enduring plight. Another critical layer involves the evolving scientific understanding of decomposition and the dispersal of evidence in marine environments. While initial investigations might have considered general oceanic forces, modern forensic oceanography offers far more sophisticated models. These can predict how specific types of organic material, or even synthetic fabrics like those likely found, would behave under varying salinity, temperature, and current conditions over extended periods. Consider the intricate dance between organic matter and the marine ecosystem. Scientists can now model with greater precision how a submerged object might degrade, be colonized by marine life, or be transported vast distances by complex current systems. This advanced scientific perspective offers a more nuanced interpretation of why evidence might surface after decades, or conversely, why certain items might remain perpetually hidden beneath the waves, thus providing a more informed basis for re-evaluating the original search parameters and the potential location of further clues. Additionally, the legal ramifications and challenges associated with prosecuting cold cases, especially those where evidence has degraded or witnesses are no longer available, present a distinct set of hurdles. The passage of time can weaken the chain of custody for evidence, making its admissibility in court more difficult. Moreover, the statute of limitations for certain offences, though often told in cases of disappearance, can still introduce complexities. Now picture the legal system grappling with evidence that is decades old. It's like trying to build a solid case on foundations that have weathered significant erosion. Investigators and prosecutors must employ innovative strategies, leveraging advances in forensic science to revalidate old evidence or uncover new connections that can meet the stringent standards of modern jurisprudence. This requires a deep understanding of both the original investigation and the capabilities of contemporary forensic techniques to overcome the inherent difficulties posed by the passage of time. The recent surfacing of weathered fabric, a tangible echo from the past, compels a re-examination of the very nature of evidence preservation and retrieval in dynamic environments. Beyond mere degradation, the ocean acts as a complex archival system, subject to chemical, biological, and physical processes that can both preserve and alter materials over vast timescales. Now consider how the specific composition of the fabric, whether natural fibers like cotton or synthetic materials like polyester, dictates its interaction with salt water, microbial activity, and sediment deposition. For instance, natural fibers might undergo accelerated decomposition due to enzymatic breakdown, while synthetics could become brittle from UV exposure if they ever reached shallow waters before being buried, or remain remarkably intact within anoxic sediment layers. This differential preservation means that the type of material found can offer clues not only about the original items, but also about the specific conditions they endured beneath the waves, painting a picture of their journey through the marine environment. Furthermore, the geological context of the discovery site is paramount in understanding how artifacts are unearthed after such protracted periods. Coastal regions are inherently dynamic, with sand dunes migrating, shorelines eroding and accreting, and storm surges capable of redistributing vast quantities of sediment. Imagine the immense power of a hurricane or a series of powerful nor'easters acting as a colossal, albeit indiscriminate, excavating force, churning the seabed and bringing buried items to shallower depths or even closer to the shore. The specific topography of the seabed, including the presence of submerged bars, troughs, or even shipwrecks acting as sediment traps, can influence where objects are deposited and subsequently revealed. Consequently, the discovery of the fabric might not be a random event, but rather a consequence of specific, large-scale geological processes that have reshaped the underwater landscape over the past 28 years. Effectively bringing the past to the surface through natural forces. Another crucial layer involves the biological interactions that can occur with submerged materials. Marine organisms, from burrowing invertebrates to sessile filter feeders, can colonize, attach to, or even ingest and excrete artifacts, altering their physical state and context. Now picture a piece of fabric becoming a substrate for barnacles or a feeding ground for amphipods. These biological processes can inadvertently preserve certain aspects of the material while accelerating the decay of others. In some cases, the shells or exoskeletons of these organisms fused to the fabric could provide additional clues about the duration of submersion or the specific marine ecosystem the item encountered. This biological dimension transforms the artifact from a passive object into an active participant in a complex ecological narrative, offering a unique window into its underwater life. Consequently, the interpretation of the discovered fabric extends beyond its immediate appearance. It becomes a palimpsest, bearing the marks of its prolonged immersion and the environmental forces that shaped it. The scientific analysis of such an artifact would involve not only identifying the material itself, but also examining any adhering sediments for microfossils that could indicate the water depth or salinity at different points in time. Furthermore, Isotopic analysis of the fabric's fibers or any associated organic residues could potentially reveal information about the water chemistry it was exposed to, offering a geochemical fingerprint of its journey. This multidisciplinary approach, blending materials science, geology, biology, and chemistry, is essential for truly understanding how and why an object, lost for decades, has finally reappeared. The societal perception of privacy in the mid-1990s, a stark contrast to today's pervasive digital surveillance, significantly influenced the initial investigative approach. In an era preceding widespread internet adoption and the ubiquity of mobile phones, individuals possessed a degree of anonymity that is now largely unimaginable. Now, consider how this fundamental difference shaped the investigative landscape. Law enforcement relied on more tangible, though ultimately less comprehensive, methods like canvassing neighborhoods and interviewing known associates. The absence of a readily searchable digital footprint meant that a voluntary disappearance or even an abduction could be executed with a far greater chance of evading immediate detection and leaving fewer traceable records. This lower digital trail meant that investigators had to depend heavily on physical evidence and direct human testimony, which, in the case of a vanishing act on a vast beach, proved inherently challenging to secure in sufficient quantity to break the case. Furthermore, the evolution of interagency cooperation and data-sharing protocols since 1996 has fundamentally reshaped the ability to tackle cold cases. Back then, the silos between different law enforcement bodies, local police, county sheriffs, and state agencies were often more pronounced, with less streamlined mechanisms for sharing critical information. Imagine attempting to assemble a complex jigsaw puzzle when each piece is held by a different person who communicates infrequently and uses a different filing system. This fragmentation meant that potential connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information might have been missed, or crucial leads might have languished due to a lack of coordinated effort. The development of national databases, standardized reporting formats, and joint task forces has since created a more integrated and efficient system for investigating and resolving long-term mysteries, offering a stark contrast to the more compartmentalized approach of the past. Another crucial layer involves the enhanced understanding of psychological profiling for individuals who deliberately vanish. While the concept of voluntary disappearance existed, the detailed study and categorization of specific motivational drivers and behavioral markers have advanced considerably. Today, forensic psychologists can analyze patterns of behavior, communication styles, and life circumstances to build more nuanced profiles, identifying potential reasons for an individual to seek a complete erasure of their past. Think about how a skilled diagnostician can identify a rare disease by recognizing subtle, interconnected symptoms that might initially seem unrelated. This deeper insight allows investigators to consider possibilities that might have been overlooked in 1996, potentially shifting the focus from solely external threats to internal motivations and pre-planned strategies for departure, thereby opening new avenues for inquiry that were previously less understood. Consequently, the legal and procedural frameworks for handling cold cases have undergone significant refinement. The challenges posed by the passage of time, such as evidence degradation and the unavailability of witnesses, are now addressed with more sophisticated legal strategies and technological solutions. Now picture the legal system confronting evidence that has weathered nearly 3 decades. It requires specialized techniques to ensure its admissibility and reliability in court. The advent of advanced forensic techniques, such as enhanced DNA analysis that can extract profiles from minute samples, and digital forensic tools capable of recovering data from aging storage media, provide new means to reevaluate and strengthen previously insufficient evidence. This evolution in legal and forensic capabilities offers a more robust foundation for pursuing justice in cases that were once considered irretrievably lost to the sands of time, demonstrating a marked progression in our capacity to uncover truth even after prolonged periods. The very act of a seemingly complete vanishing, particularly in a public and relatively populated area like a beach, raises profound questions about human perception and the limitations of immediate observation. While Sarah and Mark were reported missing, the initial hours and days were likely filled with a flurry of sightings that, in retrospect, might have been misinterpreted or dismissed as irrelevant. Think about how a crowd can obscure details, how the shimmering heat haze off the sand can distort figures, or how a brief interaction can be easily forgotten amidst the general bustle of vacationers. Investigators would have grappled with a torrent of anecdotal information, each fragment requiring careful sifting to distinguish genuine leads from the noise of everyday beach life. The challenge wasn't just finding what was lost, but discerning truth within a sea of subjective experiences and fleeting moments, each potentially holding a microscopic key to the larger mystery. Furthermore, the psychological phenomenon of confirmation bias could have played a subtle yet significant role in the early stages of the investigation. Once a narrative, that of a couple disappearing without a trace, began to form, investigators might have subconsciously gravitated towards evidence that supported this theory, potentially overlooking or downplaying information that suggested alternative scenarios such as a planned departure or an accident that left immediate evidence. Now consider how a detective, determined to find a perpetrator, might unconsciously focus on individuals who fit a certain profile, thereby missing a crucial clue from someone who falls outside those preconceived notions. This inherent human tendency to seek validation for existing beliefs can inadvertently narrow the scope of inquiry, making it harder to uncover less conventional truths, especially when faced with the baffling absence of direct evidence. Building on this, the sheer vastness and dynamic nature of the ocean itself present a unique set of challenges in evidence retrieval, extending beyond simple dispersal. The seabed is not a static repository. It's a constantly shifting landscape influenced by currents, sediment transport, and biological activity. Imagine a massive underwater conveyor belt, continuously moving and rearranging whatever lies beneath the waves. Items can be buried under meters of sand, and then, years later, be uncovered by a powerful storm surge or a change in tidal patterns, only to be reburied elsewhere. This constant geological flux means that any search efforts, even highly sophisticated ones, are essentially snapshots in time, battling against a perpetually changing environment. The very forces that might have concealed Sarah and Mark's belongings could paradoxically be the same forces that have now brought them to light, demonstrating the ocean's complex and often unpredictable role as both a preserver and a revealer of secrets. Conversely, the psychological resilience required by the families of missing persons over extended periods is a profound aspect of such enduring mysteries. The initial hope of immediate discovery gradually gives way to a prolonged state of anticipatory grief, a perpetual hovering on the brink of resolution that never quite arrives. Think about the immense emotional fortitude needed to maintain a connection to a loved one whose absence is marked by an unyielding silence, to keep their memory alive while simultaneously grappling with the gnawing uncertainty of their fate. This sustained emotional burden is a testament to the enduring power of love and the human need for closure, a silent struggle waged daily against the passage of time and the fading of certainty. Their unwavering commitment to seeking answers, even after decades, underscores the deep human imperative to understand and to find meaning in even the most devastating of circumstances. The ethical considerations surrounding the media's portrayal of missing persons cases, particularly those involving young couples and prolonged investigations, represent a distinct and crucial area of examination. In 1996, the media's role was primarily to report facts and foster community engagement in searches. However, the advent of the 24-hour news cycle and the subsequent rise of social media have amplified both the potential benefits and significant drawbacks of public attention. Now picture the delicate tightrope walk journalists must perform, balancing the public's right to know and the need for information with the profound privacy rights and emotional well-being of the victims' families. Sensationalism, the creation of unfounded theories, and the relentless pursuit of speculative details can not only cause immense distress, but also potentially contaminate the investigative process by introducing biases or misleading information. Conversely, responsible reporting can galvanize public support, encourage new witnesses to come forward, and maintain pressure on authorities to continue seeking answers. The ethical tightrope involves presenting facts accurately, respecting the dignity of those involved, and avoiding the exploitation of tragedy for ratings or clicks. Furthermore, the psychological impact on the families of victims, particularly those experiencing prolonged uncertainty, warrants a deeper dive. Beyond the initial shock and grief, there exists a unique form of sustained trauma associated with unsolved disappearances. This trauma can manifest as a constant state of hypervigilance, difficulty in processing grief, and a persistent sense of injustice. Think about the unique burden of living with an open wound, a question mark that overshadows every aspect of life. The families are not just mourning a loss, they are engaged in an ongoing, involuntary battle for answers, a struggle that can consume their lives for decades. This sustained emotional toll can affect their relationships, their careers, and their overall mental health, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate family unit, touching friends and the wider community who empathize with their enduring plight. Building on this, the evolving scientific understanding of decomposition and the dispersal of evidence in marine environments offers a fresh perspective. While initial investigations might have considered general oceanic forces, modern forensic oceanography provides far more sophisticated models. These can predict how specific types of organic material, or even synthetic fabrics like those likely found, would behave under varying salinity, temperature, and current conditions over extended timescales. Now, consider how the specific composition of the fabric, whether natural fibers like cotton or synthetic materials like polyester, dictates its interaction with salt water, microbial activity, and sediment deposition. For instance, natural fibers might undergo accelerated decomposition due to enzymatic breakdown, while synthetics could become brittle from UV exposure if they ever reached shallow waters before being buried, or remain remarkably intact within anoxic sediment layers. This differential preservation means that the type of material found can offer clues not only about the original items, but also about the specific conditions they endured beneath the waves, painting a picture of their journey through the marine environment. Consequently, the geological context of the discovery site is paramount in understanding how artifacts are unearthed after such protracted periods. Coastal regions are inherently dynamic, with sand dunes migrating, shorelines eroding and accreting, and storm surges capable of redistributing vast quantities of sediment. Imagine the immense power of a hurricane or a series of powerful nor'easters acting as a colossal, albeit indiscriminate, excavating force, churning the seabed and bringing buried items to shallower depths or even closer to the shore. The specific topography of the seabed, including the presence of submerged bars, troughs, or even shipwrecks acting as sediment traps, can influence where objects are deposited and subsequently revealed. Therefore, the discovery of the fabric might not be a random event, but rather a consequence of specific, large-scale geological processes that have reshaped the underwater landscape over the past 28 years. effectively bringing the past to the surface through natural forces. Another crucial layer involves the biological interactions that can occur with submerged materials. Marine organisms, from burrowing invertebrates to sessile filter feeders, can colonize, attach to, or even ingest and excrete artifacts, altering their physical state and context. Now picture a piece of fabric becoming a substrate for barnacles or a feeding ground for amphipods. These biological processes can inadvertently preserve certain aspects of the material while accelerating the decay of others. In some cases, the shells or exoskeletons of these organisms fused to the fabric could provide additional clues about the duration of submersion or the specific marine ecosystem the item encountered. This biological dimension transforms the artifact from a passive object into an active participant in a complex ecological narrative, offering a unique window into its underwater life. Therefore, the interpretation of the discovered fabric extends beyond its immediate appearance. It becomes a palimpsest, bearing the marks of its prolonged immersion and the environmental forces that shaped it. The scientific analysis of such an artifact would involve not only identifying the material itself, but also examining any adhering sediments for microfossils that could indicate the water depth or salinity at different points in time. Furthermore, isotopic analysis of the fabric's fibers or any associated organic residues could potentially reveal information about the water chemistry it was exposed to, offering a geochemical fingerprint of its journey. This multidisciplinary approach, blending materials science, geology, biology, and chemistry, is essential for truly understanding how and why an object, lost for decades, has finally reappeared. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've navigated the currents of time, from the initial bloom of joy to the profound stillness of unanswered questions. The echoes of laughter on that sun-drenched Florida beach in 1996 have long been overshadowed by the chilling silence of a disappearance that defied explanation. Yet, the narrative has never truly been static. It has been a slow, unfolding revelation, punctuated by the relentless rhythm of the ocean, a silent witness whose depths have finally begun to yield their secrets. The emergence of weathered fabric, a poignant fragment of a life seemingly lost to the waves, serves not as an end, but as a powerful catalyst, Riawak leashing a complex tapestry of inquiry and emotion that has persisted for nearly 3 decades. This singular discovery has, in essence, reignited the narrative's momentum, compelling us to re-examine the very fabric of memory, evidence, and the enduring human quest for understanding. As we pivot towards the final reflection, it becomes clear that the path to closure is rarely a straight line, but rather a winding course influenced by the interplay of human endeavor and the indifferent forces of nature. The investigative threads we've explored, from the meticulous reconstruction of personal lives and the scientific nuances of marine environments, to the evolving landscape of technology and societal perceptions, have all converged to create a richer, more layered understanding of this enduring mystery. These converging insights illuminate the profound resilience of hope and the intricate ways in which time itself can act as both an obscuring veil and ultimately a revealer of truth. The journey has underscored how seemingly isolated events are intricately connected to broader currents of human experience, scientific advancement, and the persistent, undeniable need for resolution. The narrative, once seemingly adrift, now finds itself approaching a confluence where the fragmented pieces begin to coalesce, pointing towards a horizon where understanding, however complex, may finally dawn. The salty Florida air of 1996, once carrying laughter, now whispers a profound lesson about the enduring nature of mystery and the relentless march of time. The story of Sarah and Mark, a narrative etched into the sands of memory and then submerged by the ocean's vast embrace, has resurfaced not just as a cold case, but as a testament to the intricate ways in which the past continues to inform the present. The discovery of weathered fabric, a tangible fragment of their vanished lives, is more than just a clue. It's a poignant reminder that even when human eyes fail to see, the world around us, in its silent, powerful processes, holds on to its secrets, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal them. This isn't merely about finding answers to a specific disappearance. It's about understanding the profound interconnectedness of human lives with the natural world, and how time, in its ceaseless flow, can act as both a concealer and a revealer. The 28 years that separated their vanishing from this moment of revelation underscore a fundamental truth about our existence. That absence, however profound, never truly erases. It transforms, it lingers, and sometimes, through unexpected currents and geological shifts, it can even resurface. The initial shock of their disappearance gave way to decades of agonizing uncertainty, a void that impacted not only their families, but the very fabric of a community. Yet the discovery acts as a powerful counterpoint to despair, a tangible symbol that even the most impenetrable mysteries can, in time, yield to persistent natural forces and the unwavering human spirit's need for truth. It speaks to a deeper dialogue between human memory and the Earth's own long, slow processes of transformation and revelation. A dialogue that often unfolds on timescales far exceeding our own immediate comprehension. This unfolding narrative serves as a profound meditation on the nature of closure. It is not merely the resolution of a crime, but a complex emotional and psychological journey. The unearthed fragments, while potentially leading to answers, also reopen old wounds, demanding a new reckoning with loss and the passage of time. It highlights that closure is not an endpoint, but an ongoing process, one that requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to engage with the difficult truths that time can unearth. The story of Sarah and Mark, therefore, extends beyond their personal tragedy. It becomes a universal parable about the persistence of memory, the power of natural forces, and the enduring human capacity to seek understanding even when faced with the vastness of the unknown. The true practice of confronting our own unanswered questions, of respecting the mysteries that persist in our lives and in the world around us, begins now, with the quiet understanding that some stories, like the tide, will always find their way back to the shore.